Hey everyone, Thomas here. I wanted to give you a quick update or sneak peek, first impression of the upcoming components feature on Bricks that still in development, but would like to share the progress here to also get some feedback from you guys how we are doing. And if you have any feedback, definitely let us know in the comments below. Then we can try to implement as much as possible. All right, without further ado, we're just quickly going to talk about what components are, why we would use them, how you use them, what are some good examples for components. And then second part of this video, I'm going to actually turn this card here, which is just a block with an image and a heading, into components. And then we're going to use a few different instances on this page to show you how useful they are, for example, through this card element here. All right, so components and bricks. If you are a programmer or a developer and you have worked with React or Vue.js, which is the JavaScript framework that we actually use for the builder, then you are definitely familiar with the components and the properties concept. And it's actually the same thing, the same idea when using components and bricks. So what is a component? A component is a reusable and customizable set of elements, or just a single element. You can turn in a heading or a button or an image into a component, but the more complex the element is going to be, the more often you use it on the page or even throughout the entire website, the more use you will get out of your components and the more powerful they're going to become. Why would you create a component? You would create a component to create more customizable, scalable, and maintainable websites with bricks. So you don't really need to worry about how you're going to set up your card initially. If you want to make a change later and you have 50 cards on your websites or 100, it's going to be pretty difficult to maintain those. Right now, what you could do, you could create a component, you could create a template out of your element, set up some dynamic data, and then make it customizable sort of on an individual instance, but not really, because you still would need to oftentimes jump into the WordPress backend, update your custom fields, and then trying to map everything to the builder and to the front end. So it's pretty cumbersome and not nearly as maintainable as it is when working with components. Same thing also goes for classes. If you want to later add a class to certain elements of your card throughout your website, you need to go to every single card and update it, right? With components, none of this problem, all of those problems and bad days are pretty much gone. And some good examples are card elements, what we just mentioned, which is also the example that I picked for this video. But it could also be a hero section with an image, a background image, a heading with a button, some text, a slider. Could be as complex as you really want it to be, right? And we can create properties in our component, and that way we expose certain settings on an individual basis so we can customize our component. It's all going to make much more sense once we actually start creating our first component. So let's just do that right away. As I mentioned before, this block here with the image and the heading is going to be our first component. So how do I turn this element into a component? I'm just going to right click on it. And then same workflow as I would also use for saving this as a template, right? Just right click on the element. But instead of saving it as a template, we're now going to save it as a component. So I'm going to click here. Now we need to give our component a name. I'm just going to call this one card. Now you can give your component a category. This is also probably going to change because right now it's a text input. So you would need to make sure once you have categories created for your components that you don't have any typos. Otherwise, it would create a new category. So I think I'm probably gonna, or not probably, I'm definitely gonna change this into a dropdown as well. So you can just select the existing categories. What do I mean by categories? If we go to the elements panel, you can also see that we have a layout category, right? Basic, general, media, WordPress. Those kind of categories you can create for your components as well. And all of the components are actually going to live under this components tab here. I'm gonna create a shortcut for that one as well. I think it's gonna be Command-Shift-C. Makes sense, right? But yeah, we'll see. So you can access this faster as well. But let's just add our first component because I now basically went back a step. So right click, save as component, give it a name, card. Category, we're gonna leave it empty because we're just gonna create one component, and then I hit create, and it tells me it created a component. And you will also notice that now, instead of the blue highlight color, I now have this purple, and this is again also going to be customizable. It's just what I settled on for now. This purple is just a CSS variable, so you're gonna be able to customize this very quickly, just with 1 or 2 lines of CSS. And yeah, we have created our first component, and you can also see that we are currently editing our component here. The elements panel on the left, you can also see here it says now that we are looking at the properties of our component, which we have to create in the next step. And on the right hand side, you can also see the element structure of the component that we're editing. This other section here, you can see it's not visible right now in the structure panel because we're editing our component. If I would click outside of the component, I'm just going to hit escape, you will be brought back to the full structure, right? But as soon as I go to my component and I'm going to edit it, yeah, you will see the elements of this active component in the structure panel. And what we are going to do now, we're actually going to create our first property because we now need to make sure that we can expose certain settings so we can customize our individual instances. Sorry, I am thinking I'm a little bit all over the place. Also, I just have to get used to how to explain this properly. I'm gonna duplicate this one. So we're gonna have 3 components. If we just have one, it doesn't really illustrate anything here. I'm gonna change the direction. I'm gonna give it a little gap in between here. And now you can see we have those 3 different instances of our card component, right? If I go to the components tab, you can also see here that I have my card component and we have 3 instances on this page. We can also pin components in the same way that we can pin elements, right? Doesn't really make sense yet because I only have one component, but it's possible. And let's just go to the next step by actually creating a property. And because we have an image and a heading, I'm going to create a property for our image, and then I'm going to create another property for our heading text so we can customize both of them on the individual instance. So let me just click on edit here. So you can see here it says properties, no properties found, edit the component to create and manage its properties. So we're going to click here on edit. And yeah, we haven't created anything. So now we click on create. And now we need to pick the type of property that we want to create. Like I said, first one that we're going to create is going to be for our image element. So I'm going to click on image. I can give this a different name. So let's just call this one card image. And I'm also going to give it a default image. So all of my components, all of my card components are going to use this image by default here. Click on insert, click on create. All right, so we created our first property for our image here. Now we're going to create another one for our heading text. So I'm going to click on create. This time we're going to choose the text type. I'm going to call this one our heading text. I'm going to give it a default as well. Let's just say default text. And we're going to click create. And now I will be able to customize my image and my heading text with those properties. The last step that we need to actually do is to tell the component, I need to connect those properties to the actual element settings. And I can do this by simply editing the element. And then I need to look for those purple little plus icons. I'm probably also going to need this. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to see. I'm not sure if you can actually see this in the video. Probably need to inverse the colors here. But you can see this little plus icon here, this little purple plus, which says connect property. So I can just click here because I want to make this image control customizable through the property. So I'm going to connect it to my card image. Okay, so that's done. And I should already see this being applied, which I'm not. Let's hit refresh. Yeah, something that needs fixing. but you can now see that it's using this default image on all of my components, not just on this page. If I want to use this on somewhere else on my website, it would also update the default image here. Last step, or next step, we'll go to our heading and we're going to look for the plus icon here, connect property, click on the plus, and now you can see that we can connect our heading text, which is the property that we created, right? So I'm going to choose that one. And now you can see that the component, every instance of this component is now using our default image and our default text. Now, if I want to customize this, all I need to do is just do, let's just stop with the second one. The first one, we just leave it as it is. Now I can say, okay, I can now actually customize those two properties, the card image and the heading text. So if I'm going to change the heading text, let's just say custom text, you can now see that the second instance here is now using the custom text. And if I'm going to customize the image, I'm going to change it. You will see that this instance now of the component is using a different image. I can also do the same thing for the last one. Maybe in that case, I'm going to leave the text and I'm just going to customize the image. Then it's going to look like this. I have 3 cards on this page only, but you can imagine if once I start having 6, 9, 12, and I'm going to use them throughout my websites later on, I actually need to somehow keep track. Where am I using all of those different cards? Using components and setting them up that way, you always have that connection. You always know this is my component. If I'm going to edit the main component, the changes are going to apply through all of the components. At least the defaults. Of course, if you set a custom value like here, this is then not going to be overwritten, but that's the whole point. If I would like to change now my main component again, I can just go to edit component and I can say, let's change the background color and let's make it darker. It's going to, again, apply to all of the different component instances throughout this page and throughout my entire website. And I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to show for this first sneak peek. Like I said in the beginning of this video, if you have any feedback, what do you think about the current implementation so far? Did I miss anything? Did you catch any bugs here besides the element, the image re-render that I had to manually trigger? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks so much for watching.